Nick taking his life into his own hands. We're not going to get another wipeout, are we?
This is the most efficient way to move across ice.
You know, I am probably one of the laziest vloggers on YouTube, especially after this trip, watching Nick, Thomas and Gavin do their stuff. Thomas especially is probably the king of B-roll and is always shooting. Lesson learned there, because as I put this video together, I'm having a little bit of a hard time because I don't have an awful lot of footage. I guess I concentrate more on the photography, and the videography usually comes second, but of course when it comes to putting vlogs together, I struggle a little bit. Okay, now our first morning we got up really early and we drove from Lake Louise all the way to Abraham Lake, which is near Saskatchewan Crossing. It's about an hour and 40 minutes from Lake Louise. So we had to get up really early to get there before sunrise. Sunrise was absolutely beautiful, but I had a really hard time finding a composition, so I ended up just taking a quick shot of a mountain with some beautiful light behind it. I'm not happy with the shot overall, compositionally wise, but the light was really something else. And I didn't take any video while I was shooting this image here. After our short stint on Abraham Lake in the morning, we decided to go to a little town called Nordegg, where we had a delicious breakfast, and we then headed back towards Abraham Lake for an evening shoot. All right, back on Abraham Lake. I just spent a couple of hours goofing around with the other guys here. I'm not getting an awful lot of photography in, but it's an awful lot of fun. If you want to see some of the tomfoolery we've been getting up to, go to Gavin Hardcastle's channel, and I'll leave a link up in the corner here, or you can go to Thomas Heaton's channel, another link up here, or you can go to Nick Page's channel, and I'm sure he'll have some goofing around on that channel as well. It's quite funny actually. So I'm trying to find a composition or a foreground that I can use for this evening. There's a lot of snow on the lake, so there's just no way I'm going to get the ice bubbles that you usually get on Abraham Lake. But I do have these kind of crests of ice here, right here. So I'm going to see if I can utilize those somehow, or find a clearing in the snow where I can reflect light. It looks like we might get a really nice sunset, so fingers crossed as always for good light. It's just a matter of finding a half decent composition as always. It's just beautiful out here. It's actually not that cold. It's hovering around 0 Celsius, so it's not too bad, and the wind is almost non-existent. I'm having a heck of a time finding compositions today. I mean, the mountains are just absolutely fantastic. The river coming down here, the ice. I wandered around the ice for quite a while, and I couldn't really find the ice heaves, or where the ice is kind of broken up. I couldn't find a composition that I really liked. So I walked all the way back to the car, and then I walked along the other side of this river here, and I found a pretty nice composition, or something that I like. It's got a nice foreground, and then we've got running water, but the only problem is that the light is just not working anymore. It's there's some beautiful clouds, but there's just no light. So I'm going to wait around here for a little while. In the meantime, I'll show you the composition that I have, and hopefully I'll get a little bit of light. Now I noticed that the mountains looking that way, there's some pretty nice light on them, but finding a foreground, I just can't find anything that I really like. So let me show you the composition that I have here. I found this little island of ice surrounding these rocks in the foreground, and I really like that. It really adds a lot of depth to the image. Now the peak in the background, even though it's quite dominant in real life, it's, you know, there's the peak there. It's dominant in real life, but in this case I've kind of made the foreground more dominant because I just find it a little bit more interesting. The only thing other than the light that I don't really like about this composition so much is I'm a little bit lower than the horizon line, so I'm losing quite a bit of the bottom of the peak. So we have this white line going across here, and it's not really adding an awful lot to the photograph. Like I said before, though, what it's really missing is light, and you know, light is the key to good photography. If this had light on it, then it would certainly really improve the image overall. Now, as far as exposure goes, I've tried to slow it down as much as possible. So I've got it down to 1.6 seconds. What I had to do was use a breakthrough photography ND polarizing filter. So not only is it a polarizer, but it also has a built-in 6-stop ND filter. So it's really great for slowing down your shutter speed and polarizing without having to stack filters all the time. Because as soon as you start stacking filters, then you run into some problems with vignetting and also image quality. And I find that filter works really well for this kind of thing. But I'll take a photograph and I'll show you the end result, and perhaps we'll get some evening light, I'm not sure. But I'll just show you the results from this type of lighting. Okay, I pretty much gave up on the composition towards the mountains. The light just doesn't look like it's going to happen for me. The clouds in front of me are just fantastic right now. You can see them, they're almost like lenticular clouds. But the mountains are so far away, and pictures of just mountaintops with clouds doesn't really appeal to me anyway, unless it's something really, really dramatic. But I've come across these really great aspen trees, and the light is nice and soft right now. So I'm trying to isolate individual trees or trees that are kind of paired together or a little grouping. But I'm using a really shallow depth of field because I like the tones behind the trees. There's really nice dark tones and then lighter tones. But I have to shoot it around f5.6 or even f4 to just get these trees that are in the foreground that are closer to me, get them nice and sharp, and then get that really nice blurry background. So I'm using a 70 to 200, and I'm pretty much racked out right out to 200 so that the angle of view is really narrow, so I'm eliminating that background. So I'm just going to keep playing with these. There's two trees right here that I really quite like, and the light is just really nice and soft and has a little bit of direction to it. So I mean, on the back of the camera, looking through the viewfinder, it looks fantastic, but as I've said before, I have a hard time kind of envisioning it until I've actually opened it up onto a larger screen so I can have a closer look. But yeah, right now this is appealing to me more than the mountain scene here, because there just isn't any light. I'm really happy with how this image turned out. Now, I did take a number of different compositions, but I think this image with just this tree kind of plonked in the center is my favorite out of the bunch. The light, as I said in my little spiel there, was very soft, and of course with having snow on the ground there, it was reflecting light back into the bark of the tree. Now, as far as processing goes, I decided to give the image a slight blue tone to kind of indicate the coolness of the scene. And I also brightened up the highlights and the bright areas, and then darkened the background just a little bit, just to kind of bring that tree forward. But overall, I'm really happy. I think this is probably my favorite image from the whole trip. and I'm sure that it will probably make its way onto my top 10 list for 2019. So it's a great start to the year. It's just great when you come away with images that you really didn't expect. Hi everyone, hope you're doing really well. Today, Bow Lake. The snow is absolutely incredible here right now. I've been here a number of times over the years and I don't think I've quite seen this amount of snow before. So it makes getting around very tricky. Now I had to borrow a pair of snowshoes. I have snowshoes at home, but for whatever reason I forgot to bring them. So I borrowed Brent Henderson's snowshoes. But getting around even with snowshoes is pretty difficult. Now I'm here with Nick Page, and he's never used snowshoes before, so it's quite funny watching Nick get through the snow. And then Thomas decided to forego the snowshoes, and last I saw he was up to his neck in snow. And then Gavin, I just heard a bunch of swearing, and I never saw him again. So now, as beautiful as this is right now, we're running into the same problem that I run into in a lot of my videos, and that's no light. Now I always talk about flat light, but I thought I'd demonstrate what I mean by flat light, because snow is horrendous when it is in flat light, unless you can find a composition that's going to work where it creates this two-dimensional look to your photograph, or one-dimensional, and sometimes you can use that to your advantage. Now I haven't found anything yet, but I'm looking. But I'm going to take some shots of this scene here. I found a little bit of open water here, and you've got the mountains in the background, and then we've got the Bow Glacier over here with Bow Falls. But we just have this white mass of snow in the middle, and because the light is so flat, there's absolutely no texture in there whatsoever, because we have white grayish clouds above, and it's just reflecting all that kind of ambient light onto, well, the landscape in front of me. So it does make photography a little bit tricky, but I'll take some shots. I'll compose a shot with this in the foreground, this in the middle ground, and then the mountains, and then I'll be able to explain a little bit better what I mean by flat light. Okay, so here is my raw file, and you can see that it's quite blue. The reason why it's blue is because the sun hadn't actually come up yet. We were waiting for the sunrise, so you get that blue hour. Now the composition is a little strange in this one. Usually I put mountains kind of in the center of the frame in the upper third, but I thought I'd try something a little bit different here. I wanted to crop this square and have the smaller of the peaks in the center, just to do something a little bit different. But as you can see, there's hardly any detail in the snow whatsoever, because we just don't have any directional light. You can see a little bit where the snow, these little hummocks or little pillows, but that's about it. So this type of lighting, unless you can find a composition that's very graphic, perhaps something really contrasty, and you could probably do that with this photograph if you wanted to. What I ended up doing, because I wanted to try and get something out of this scene, because I really did like that kind of heart-shaped water feature in the foreground, is I used luminosity masks in Photoshop, and I brightened up the image considerably and tried to define some of those snow pillows and those hummocks, give them a little bit of texture by just adding contrast and clarity. And you can see in this image that there's also a lot more texture in the clouds. So it is there in the image, you just have to bring it out. The only place that I really couldn't find very much texture at all is right in the center of the photograph, where we have that large expansive snow patch in the middle there. But overall, I quite like the image. It was more of a demonstration to see what flat light looks like in a photograph. Those of you that ski a lot will know that skiing in flat light can be extremely difficult because you can't see the terrain in front of you. It all looks just like a flat plane, and this is very similar to that. How's the snow showing going, Nick?
Oh, it's excellent. I'm
Loving every minute of it.
Come on!
I'm down. Stop your digging. Oh no.
Look at these guys. Such amateurs. Amateurs.
With the elegance and grace of a wounded manatee, he carves through the snow. Blasting up. Come on, yes. Better follower than a leader. Come on. You don't have to so close. Ah, shit. Let's go.
So, was ploughing through the snow all worth it? I think it was. It was a beautiful scene. What I especially like about this this composition was the layout of the trees. They just seem to all have their place. Nice separation between each of the trees. The only place where they didn't separate so well was kind of on the left side of the frame, but it's on the outside of the frame anyway, so the middle especially, it was just beautiful. The light was very flat, and it would have been nice to have a little bit more directional light, but for what it was, I was really happy with the way this image turned out. Now, I did have to do a little bit of dodging and burning, and I used luminosity masks to try and bring out some of those higher values in the snow, and then the shadows I kind of darkened down a little bit just to give it some depth and texture. But overall, it was a really great scene. And we did go back the next day to try and capture the same scene in better light, but we just never got the light that we wanted. So this was kind of the end result of this day. I went for the pano because it just lent itself to that kind of panoramic view with the trees kind of going from left to right across the frame, and then the dominant peak in the center there. Yeah, so overall I really like this image. Right, that's it for this week. I've actually run out of video footage from the day, so I'm going to have to stop it here anyway. And usually I use a drone to fill in a few spots, but drones aren't allowed in national parks, so no drone footage. Please stay tuned for next week's installment. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. And if you enjoy the content of my channel, be sure to subscribe. All right, everybody. Thanks ever so much. Bye for now. Okay, Gavin. So what makes this scene juicy?
The juiciness comes from these beautiful, curving, leading lines, and the fact that this is a winter wonderland, rich and deep in 4 feet of chilling snow. The thick pillows of snow hanging in the trees majestically, and of course, this epic pinnacle of a mountain.
Actually, that was a serious question.
That was a serious answer.